My name is Margaret Brett, and at 68 years old, I never imagined I would have to fight for my own bedroom. After spending a peaceful weekend with my sister, I returned to find my sanctuary transformed. My antique bed was gone, replaced by my son and daughter-in-law's modern set. As I stood frozen in the doorway, Diane flashed that smug smile. "Surprise! It's our room now." I stayed remarkably calm as I replied, "Pack your things. You'll need your own house tonight." Her smile vanished instantly. If you're watching this, please let me know where you're viewing from. Hit like and subscribe if my story resonates with you. Robert and I built our dream home 40 years ago, a charming colonial with enough room for the family we planned to have. We poured every ounce of love and savings into creating the perfect sanctuary in our quiet Boston suburb. The master bedroom with its bay window overlooking our garden was where we watched countless sunrises together. After 4 decades of marriage, I lost Robert to cancer 5 years ago. The pain of his absence never truly fades, but our home contains the essence of our life together, making it bearable. Our son William was our pride and joy, our only child after years of trying. We raised him with all the love and opportunities we could provide. He excelled in school, earned a scholarship to Northeastern University, and landed a promising position at a tech startup after graduation. Every milestone in his life unfolded within these walls, from his first steps across the living room floor to graduation celebrations in our backyard. I could point to any corner of this house and tell you a William story. After Robert passed, I settled into a quieter life. My 30 years as an elementary school teacher had given me a comfortable pension, and Robert had been prudent with our investments. Between my retirement funds, Social Security, and a small rental property we had purchased as an investment, I had enough to maintain our home and live comfortably. My circle of retired teacher friends kept me busy with book clubs, volunteer work at the local library, and occasional trips to museums and theaters in Boston. William met Diane during his final year of college. She was studying marketing and had big dreams of working for a luxury brand. Their romance moved at whirlwind speed, and within 6 months they announced their engagement. I remember the day they told me sitting at my kitchen table. William looked happier than I had seen him since his father died, but something about Diane gave me pause. "She makes me so happy," Mom, William had said, squeezing Diane's hand across the table. "I just know I want to spend my life with him," Diane added, the large diamond on her finger catching the light as she reached for her water glass. I noticed things about Diane from the beginning that concerned me. The designer clothes she wore, despite being a student, her dismissive comments about our quaint suburb, and the way her eyes assessed the value of everything in my home. But William was in love, and I wanted to support him, so I kept my reservations to myself. Their wedding was an elaborate affair, far beyond what I thought appropriate for 2 young people just starting out. Diane had expensive taste, and though her parents contributed, they weren't in a position to fund the extravaganza she envisioned. I found myself writing checks for flower arrangements that cost more than my monthly mortgage payment, and a wedding dress that could have been a down payment on a car. "William and I want to start our lives together properly," Diane had explained when I gently questioned the expense. "We only plan to do this once." After the wedding, they moved into a luxury apartment in Boston that stretched their budget to the breaking point. William had received a promotion at the tech startup, and Diane found work at a high-end department store, but their lifestyle exceeded their income. Each time we met for dinner, I noticed new designer items Diane was eager to showcase. 8 months into their marriage, disaster struck. The tech startup where William worked lost its major funding and laid off half its staff, including William. He immediately began job hunting, but positions matching his experience and salary requirements were scarce. "It will be fine, Mom," he assured me during our weekly phone calls. "I have some promising interviews lined up." What William didn't share, but I later discovered, was how quickly their financial situation deteriorated. Diane refused to adjust their lifestyle, continuing to shop and dine out as though nothing had changed. Their savings evaporated within weeks. 3 months after William lost his job, he called me sounding defeated. They had received an eviction notice after missing 2 months of rent payments. Their credit cards were maxed out, and they had nowhere to go. We just need a little time to get back on our feet, William explained, his voice cracking with emotion. I hadn't heard since he was a child. Maybe a few months to save up for a security deposit on a smaller place. Though my instincts warned me to proceed carefully, my heart couldn't bear the thought of my son being homeless. The guest bedroom is yours for 6 months, I offered. That should give you enough time to find work and save for your own place. When they arrived with their belongings, I had clear expectations. They would stay in the guest bedroom, contribute to household chores, and aggressively save money and job hunt. Diane hugged me tightly as they moved in. We're so grateful, Margaret, she said, her eyes welling with what I thought were genuine tears. This is just temporary, I promise. Little did I know how differently she defined temporary, or that my kindness would open the door to the most difficult battle of my life. The first month of our new living arrangement seemed promising. Diane kept the guest bedroom tidy and often prepared dinner before I returned from my volunteer shifts at the library. William spent his days applying for jobs and had several promising interviews. In the evenings, we would gather around the dining table Robert had crafted by hand and share stories from our days. After years of living alone, I found myself enjoying the company and the sounds of life filling the house again. This pot roast is delicious, Diane, I complimented one evening as we enjoyed a meal she had prepared. Thanks, Margaret. It's the least I can do, she replied, smiling warmly. Actually, I was wondering if you might teach me how to make those apple dumplings. William keeps talking about. These moments made me hopeful that perhaps my initial impressions of Diane had been too harsh. Maybe she was simply young and needed guidance. I began to envision a closer relationship forming between us, one where I could be the mother figure she needed. By the 6th week, however, subtle changes began to emerge. I returned from grocery shopping one afternoon to find the living room furniture rearranged. The antique coffee table Robert had inherited from his grandmother had been pushed into a corner, replaced by a sleek glass table I didn't recognize. Where did this come from? I asked William, as he helped me carry in the groceries. Oh, Diane found it on sale. She thought it would brighten up the room. Do you like it? I struggled to maintain my composure. The room was fine as it was, William. This is my home. Major changes should be discussed first. He looked uncomfortable. Mom, Diane was just trying to help. She thinks some of the furniture looks dated. That conversation marked the beginning of a pattern. Small changes accumulated around the house. My crocheted throw pillows disappeared from the couch, replaced by geometric patterned ones in colors that clashed with my decor. Family photos were rearranged, with several of Robert relegated to less prominent positions. My kitchen cabinets were reorganized without my input, leaving me searching for items in my own home. One evening, I overheard Diane on the phone in the guest room, the door slightly ajar. You should see the master bedroom, she said to whoever was on the line. It's massive, with this huge walk-in closet going to waste. She barely uses half the space in this house. I quietly retreated, unsettled by her words. The master bedroom was my private sanctuary, filled with memories of Robert. The idea that Diane viewed it as wasted space felt deeply invasive. Diane began inviting her friends over without informing me beforehand. I would arrive home to find strangers in my living room using my dishes with no advance notice or introductions. Margaret, these are my friends from college, Diane would say casually, as though it were her home to open to guests. We were just catching up. When I expressed to William that I would appreciate advance notice of visitors, he seemed caught between loyalty to his wife and respect for my reasonable request. Mom, Diane feels cooped up here. She's used to a more active social life. Can you try to be flexible? His words stung. I had opened my home to them in their time of need, and somehow I was being cast as rigid and unwelcoming for expecting basic courtesy. The comments about my decor grew more frequent and less subtle. This wallpaper must be from the 90s, Diane remarked one day, running her hand along the dining room wall. We could brighten this whole space with a fresh coat of paint. The wallpaper was chosen by Robert and me when we renovated 15 years ago, I replied firmly. I have no plans to change it. She shrugged dismissively. Just a thought. This place could really shine with some updates. I began noticing personal items being moved or missing altogether. A silver picture frame that had always sat on my bedside table disappeared. When I asked about it, Diane claimed she had moved it while dusting and forgotten to replace it. 3 days later, I found it tucked away in a drawer. My collection of antique teacups that had belonged to my grandmother were rearranged with two missing entirely. The most alarming incident occurred when I discovered Diane in my bedroom closet examining my clothes. "What are you doing in here?" I asked, startled to find her among my belongings. She didn't even look embarrassed. "Just seeing if you had any clothes you might want to donate. There's a charity drive at church." I decide when and what to donate, Diane. Please don't go through my things without asking. That evening, I called my sister Janet. They've been there almost 3 months, and I feel like an intruder in my own home. I confessed, keeping my voice low, though I was alone in my bedroom with the door closed. "Margaret, you need to establish firm boundaries," Janet advised. "William is your son, and you want to help him, but this Diane sounds like she's taking advantage." "William always takes her side," I sighed. "She has him wrapped around her finger." "Then you need to be extra clear about your expectations. This is your house, not theirs." The following day, I overheard a conversation that chilled me to the bone. Diane was in the backyard on the phone, unaware that I was watering plants just around the corner of the house. "It's just a matter of time," she was saying. "Once we establish ourselves here, the whole house will eventually be ours anyway. She's getting older, and William is the only child. Why should we struggle in a tiny apartment when there's all this space?" Her words left me shaking. This wasn't about temporary help during a difficult time. Diane was playing a long game, viewing my home as her future inheritance, something to be claimed rather than eventually naturally passed down. That weekend, I decided I needed space to think clearly. "I'm going to visit Janet for the weekend," I announced at breakfast on Friday. "I haven't seen her in months, and she's been asking me to come." "That sounds nice, Mom," William said, looking up from his laptop where he had been browsing job listings. "Give Aunt Janet our love." Diane smiled brightly. "A girls' weekend sounds fun. Don't worry about anything here, we'll take care of the house." As I packed my overnight bag, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being maneuvered out of my own home. Still, I needed my sister's perspective and some distance to clear my head. Little did I know that this weekend away would be the catalyst for the most shocking betrayal I could imagine. Janet lived in a cozy townhouse in Portland, Maine, about a 3-hour drive from my home. The moment I stepped through her door, the weight I had been carrying seemed to lift slightly. Her house smelled of cinnamon and coffee, and the familiar surroundings felt like a safe haven. "You look exhausted," Janet said, pulling me into a hug. After settling in with a cup of tea in her sunroom, I poured out everything that had been happening. The rearranged furniture, the intrusive questions, the comments about wasted space, and finally, the overheard conversation about their plans to eventually take over my home. "I feel like I'm being erased from my own life," I admitted, tears spilling onto my cheeks. "Robert and I built that house. Every corner holds a memory." Janet listened, without interrupting her expression, growing increasingly troubled. When I finished, she took my hands in hers. "Margaret, this isn't just about a difficult daughter-in-law, this is about respect and boundaries. Your home is not community property. You opened your door to help them, not to be pushed out." But William seems blind to it all. Every time I bring up a concern, he defends her. "Then you need to be absolutely clear," Janet insisted. "Set firm timelines for their move-out date. Document any agreements in writing. And most importantly, don't let them bully you into giving up spaces that matter to you." That night, I called William to check in. Everything sounded normal, with William reporting he had a promising job lead, and Diane planning to prepare my favorite lasagna for my return. "We miss you, Mom," William said. "The house feels empty without you." His words reassured me somewhat, but I couldn't shake the uneasiness that had been building for months. I called again the next evening and noticed William seemed distracted, mentioning that Diane's parents had stopped by unexpectedly. "Is everything okay?" I asked. "Everything's fine, Mom. Just busy. Enjoy your weekend with Aunt Janet." Throughout Sunday, a gnawing anxiety grew in my stomach. Janet noticed my distraction. "Why don't you head home earlier than planned?" she suggested. "If something feels wrong, trust your instinct." I left Portland around 4 in the afternoon, expecting to arrive home by early evening. Dark clouds gathered as I drove, matching my unsettled mood. The familiar streets of my neighborhood usually brought comfort, but today they only intensified my apprehension. Turning into my driveway, I noticed Diane's red sports car parked prominently where I usually left my sedan. A minor annoyance but symbolic of the gradual takeover happening in my home. More troubling was the unfamiliar furniture visible through the living room window, illuminated by lamps I didn't recognize. I approached my front door and inserted my key only to find it wouldn't turn. Confused, I tried again, jiggling it slightly. Nothing. The lock had been changed. My heart pounding, I retrieved the spare key, hidden in a false rock in the garden, hoping it would still work in the back door. Thankfully, the rear entry still accepted my spare key. I stepped into my kitchen and immediately noticed changes. New curtains hung at the windows, and my collection of hand-painted canisters had been replaced by sleek, modern containers. The refrigerator was covered with unfamiliar magnets and photos of William and Diane I had never seen before. Moving through the dining room, I saw my china cabinet had been emptied of the wedding china Robert and I had received 50 years ago. In its place stood sleek white dinnerware with gold trim. The antique chandelier Robert had lovingly restored now bore a modern drum shade. The living room was even more transformed. My comfortable floral sofa was gone, replaced by a gray sectional that dominated the space. The family photos that had lined the mantel were rearranged, with many removed entirely. A large television now hung on the wall where Robert's painting of the Cape Cod shoreline had been displayed. With growing dread, I climbed the stairs to the second floor. The hallway runner, a wedding gift from Robert's mother, had vanished, leaving the hardwood floor bare. The guest bedroom door stood open, revealing boxes and storage containers stacked haphazardly inside. Some contained my clothes, visible through clear plastic. My hands trembling, I approached my bedroom door, which stood wide open. What I saw inside caused my knees to buckle. The room had been completely transformed. My antique four-poster bed, the one Robert and I had shared for 40 years, was gone. In its place stood a modern platform bed with a tufted headboard I had seen Diane admiring in a catalog. The warm yellow walls were now painted a stark white. The dresser where I kept Robert's watches and cufflinks had vanished, replaced by a mirrored vanity covered with Diane's makeup and perfume bottles. The bedding, the curtains, the rugs, all were new and unfamiliar. Even the reading chair where I spent countless evenings with my books had disappeared. On the walls where treasured family photos once hung were abstract prints in black and silver frames. As I stood frozen in shock, I heard footsteps behind me. Diane appeared wearing a triumphant smile. "Surprise," she exclaimed, gesturing broadly. "We redecorated while you were gone. Doesn't it look amazing? So much brighter and more modern." William appeared behind her, his expression a mixture of discomfort and defiance. He couldn't meet my eyes. "Where are my things?" I managed to ask, my voice barely above a whisper. "We packed everything carefully." Diane assured me, her tone suggesting she expected gratitude. "Your stuff is in boxes in the guest room. We figured you would be more comfortable in the smaller bedroom anyway, and we need the master suite, especially when we start trying for a baby." The casualness with which she announced their takeover of my bedroom, the heart of my personal space, the room where Robert had taken his last breath, struck me like a physical blow. "You did all this without asking me." I directed my question to William, whose face flushed with shame. "Mom, we thought you might resist change if we discussed it first." Diane felt it would be better as a surprise to show you how nice it could look. "It's our room now," Diane added, her smile unwavering. "I think you'll find the guest room is plenty big enough for your needs. And this way, when the baby comes, we'll have enough space for a proper nursery." Something inside me shifted in that moment. The shock and hurt crystallized into a clarity I hadn't felt in years. This was my home, built with Robert, filled with our lifetime of memories. I would not be relegated to a guest in the house I owned, nor would I allow our sanctuary to be dismantled piece by piece. "Pack your things," I said, my voice surprisingly calm and steady. "You'll need your own house tonight." Diane's smile faltered, then disappeared entirely. The smugness drained from her face, replaced by disbelief. What, she stammered. You heard me, I continued, gaining strength with each word. This is my house. You violated my trust and my space. I want you both out tonight. In the stunned silence that followed, I realized I had reached a turning point from which there would be no return. Diane recovered from her shock quickly, her face contorting with indignation. You can't just throw us out, she snapped, her previous sweet demeanor vanishing entirely. This is our home too. William finally spoke up, his voice pleading. Mom, please be reasonable. We put a lot of work into making this space better for everyone. Better, I repeated, my voice steady, despite my racing heart. You took my bedroom, the room I shared with your father for 40 years, without asking. You packed away my possessions as if they were meaningless. How exactly is that better for me? You're being selfish, Diane cut in, her true colors now fully visible. This house is too big for just one person. We're family. We're supposed to share. Family doesn't steal from each other, I replied. Family doesn't wait for someone to leave for 2 days and then take over their most personal space. William stepped forward, placing his hand on my arm. Mom, we can't just leave tonight. We have nowhere to go. Please, let's talk about this rationally. I gently removed his hand. How long have you been planning this, William? His eyes darted to Diane, then back to me. His silence told me everything. Weeks, Diane answered defiantly. And it makes perfect sense. The master bedroom is wasted on just one person. We need the space, especially when we start our family. So you waited until I was gone, changed my locks, moved my belongings, and expected me to simply accept being pushed into a smaller room in my own home. The full scope of their betrayal was becoming clearer by the minute. The key thing was just temporary, William said quickly. We were going to give you the new keys when you got back. We just wanted to make sure we could finish the surprise without you coming home early. As they continued making excuses, my mind filled with memories of building this house with Robert. I remembered how we had saved for years to afford the perfect plot of land, how we had worked with an architect to design each room, how Robert had insisted on the large bay window in the master bedroom because he knew I loved to read in natural light. This was not just a house with interchangeable rooms, it was the physical manifestation of our love story. Your father and I built this house, I said to William, my voice breaking slightly. That bedroom was where he spent his final days, where I held his hand as he took his last breath. It's not just a room with a bigger closet, William. It's sacred to me. For the first time I saw a flicker of genuine remorse cross his face, but before he could respond, Diane jumped in. That was years ago, Margaret. Life goes on. You can't keep a shrine forever. Her callous words struck me like a slap. In that moment, I saw with perfect clarity that Diane viewed me not as family, but as an obstacle to her ambitions, a caretaker of assets she felt entitled to inherit. You have 1 week, I said firmly. 1 week to find alternative housing and remove yourselves and your belongings from my home. 1 week, Diane exclaimed. That's impossible. You can't legally evict us that quickly anyway. I'm not evicting tenants, Diane. I'm asking my son and his wife who have violated my trust in the most profound way to leave my private property. William ran his hands through his hair in frustration. Mom, please. We can work this out. Maybe we overstepped, but we can move everything back. It's too late for that, I replied, the weight of sadness heavy in my chest. The trust is broken. I need you to leave. The next few hours passed in a blur of tense exchanges and phone calls. Diane called her parents, who then called me, demanding I reconsider. William alternated between apologizing and trying to negotiate for more time. I remained firm in my decision, though each moment felt like a knife twisting in my heart. This was my only child, and I was forcing him from my home. That night, I slept in the guest room surrounded by boxes of my possessions. I couldn't bear to enter the transformed master bedroom knowing Robert's and my sacred space had been so thoroughly violated. As I lay awake, I was flooded with memories of our life together. I remembered the night we brought newborn William home, how Robert had placed the bassinet next to our bed so I could reach out and touch our son throughout the night. I recalled Robert's battle with cancer, how we had moved his favorite chair near the window so he could watch the changing seasons during his final months. I thought of the thousands of ordinary moments, the whispered conversations, the Sunday mornings reading newspapers together, all contained within those four walls. The next morning, William knocked softly on my door. His eyes were red-rimmed from a sleepless night. "Can we talk, Mom? Just us?" I nodded, following him downstairs to the kitchen. Diane was notably absent. "She's at her parents'," William explained, pouring coffee for us both. "They're letting us stay in their guest room while we figure things out." "William, how could you do this?" I asked the question that had kept me awake all night. He stared into his coffee mug. "It was Diane's idea initially. She said you would adjust once it was done, that you might resist, but would eventually see it made sense." He looked up at me, his expression pained. "I knew it was wrong, Mom. But every time I suggested talking to you first, she would get upset. Say I wasn't supporting her, that I was choosing you over her. So you chose her over me instead." He flinched at my words. "It wasn't supposed to be a choice. She convinced me this was best for everyone. That you would appreciate the guest room being more manageable as you got older." The presumption took my breath away. "I'm 68, William, not incapacitated. This is my home, not a waiting room for a nursing facility." "I know," he whispered. "I'm so sorry, Mom." Over the following days, the tension in the house was palpable. Meals were eaten in silence when we crossed paths at all. Diane returned only to collect more belongings, refusing to speak to me directly. William moved between apologetic and defensive, clearly torn between his wife and his mother. While they packed, I consulted with my attorney Richard, a longtime friend of Robert's who had handled our legal affairs for decades. "They have no legal right to stay if you want them out," Richard confirmed. "But Margaret, are you certain about this? It's a drastic step." "They took my bedroom, Richard," I explained. "They waited until I was away and completely violated my most personal space. How can I ever trust them again?" I spent hours documenting my belongings, photographing damage I discovered to several cherished items. My grandmother's handmade quilt had been stuffed carelessly into a plastic bin, one corner torn. The antique clock Robert had restored was missing its pendulum. Family photo albums were stacked haphazardly, pages bent and covers damaged. Each discovery reinforced my decision while simultaneously breaking my heart. This was my son, my only child, participating in this violation of my home and memories. Where had I gone wrong? 5 days after my return, I called a family meeting in the living room. William arrived, looking exhausted, Diane beside him with a cold, defensive expression. "I want to have an honest conversation," I began. "William, you told me you needed temporary housing while you got back on your feet financially. It's been nearly 4 months. What's the actual state of your finances?" William glanced at Diane before answering. "It's been harder than I expected to find a comparable position. The jobs I've been offered pay significantly less than my previous salary." "And your savings?" I pressed. He hesitated. "We don't have any savings left. We actually have quite a bit of credit card debt." "Which is why this arrangement makes sense," Diane interjected. "Why should we struggle to pay rent when there's plenty of room here? Eventually this house will be William's anyway." Her words confirmed my worst suspicions. So this was never about temporary help during a difficult time. "You plan to move in permanently from the start." Not exactly, William hedged. But as time went on, it seemed like the most practical solution. "Practical for whom?" I asked. "For all of us," Diane insisted. "You're not getting any younger, Margaret. Eventually you'll need assistance. When that time comes, we'll already be established here to help you. And in the meantime, you'll just take over my home, room by room." "We're improving it," Diane said defensively. "That bedroom furniture was ancient. The whole house could use updating." "The ancient furniture you discarded was handcrafted and held deep sentimental value," I replied. "But this isn't really about decor, is it? It's about control and entitlement." Diane's eyes narrowed. "I heard you talking to your sister on the phone," I continued. "About waiting until I need a nursing home, and how the house will eventually be yours anyway. Was that your plan all along? To wait me out?" William looked stricken, but Diane merely lifted her chin defiantly. "It's just practical planning. People your age don't need all this space or nice things. You should be grateful we're willing to look after you when the time comes." Her cruel comment crystallized everything for me. In Diane's mind, I was already irrelevant, a placeholder, until she could claim what she viewed as rightfully hers. And my son, whether through weakness or misplaced loyalty, was enabling her. "The moving truck I've arranged will be here tomorrow morning at 9, I said calmly. "I expect you to be ready." "You're making a huge mistake," Diane hissed. "When you need help later, don't come crying to us, and don't expect to be part of our children's lives either." Her threat to withhold future grandchildren cut deep, but I refused to be manipulated. I would love to be a grandmother someday, Diane, but not at the cost of my dignity and self-respect. As they left the room, I sat alone in my altered living room, surrounded by furniture I didn't recognize. Despite the pain, I felt a growing sense of resolve. I had one more card to play, one that neither William nor Diane expected. It was time to reclaim my life and my home, while still finding a way to help my son without destroying myself in the process. The evening after our confrontation, I sat alone in the guest bedroom surrounded by boxes of my displaced belongings. Each item I unpacked brought fresh waves of emotion. Robert's reading glasses still rested in their case untouched since his passing. Our wedding album, thankfully undamaged, contained photos, yellowed with age, but vibrant with memories. These weren't just possessions, they were physical anchors to the life we had built together. William knocked softly on the doorframe, hovering uncertainly in the doorway. "Mom, can I come in?" I nodded, setting aside the photo album. He entered and sat awkwardly on the edge of the bed, looking around at the boxes. "I had no idea you had so many personal things in the master bedroom," he said quietly. "That's part of the problem, William. You didn't ask. You didn't try to understand what that room meant to me." He ran his hand through his hair, a gesture so like his father it made my heart ache. "Diane has been making calls all day, but finding an apartment on such short notice is impossible. Most places want first and last month's rent plus a security deposit. And you don't have the money I finished for him." He shook his head miserably. "We're in worse shape than I let on. The truth is, we've been in financial trouble since before I lost my job." "What do you mean?" William's shoulders slumped. "Diane has expensive tastes. I tried to keep up, but even with my salary, we were spending beyond our means. When I lost my job, we were already maxed out on credit cards." "Why didn't you tell me this before?" "I was embarrassed," he admitted. "And Diane kept saying things would turn around, that we just needed to maintain appearances, until I found another good job." I studied my son's face, seeing both the man he had become and the little boy I had raised. "William, I need to ask you something important, and I need you to be completely honest with me." He looked up, waiting. "Was moving into my bedroom part of a larger plan to eventually take over the entire house?" His hesitation told me everything before he even spoke. "Diane thinks about the future more practically than I do," he said finally. "She pointed out that since I'm your only child, the house will eventually come to me anyway. She thought it made sense for us to establish ourselves here gradually." "Gradually push me out of my own home, you mean?" "She didn't see it that way," William protested weakly. "She talked about it as a transition. Said lots of families do multi-generational living and that the master bedroom made more sense for a young couple planning to have children than for a single older woman." His words, though spoken in defense of his wife, revealed the extent of their calculus about my home and my future. "And what about what I want, William? Did that factor into these plans at all?" He looked down at his hands. "Diane said you'd adjust. That you might resist at first but would eventually appreciate having us here to help as you got older. Help that comes with the expectation of taking over my home isn't help at all," I said softly. "It's a transaction, and one I never agreed to." The next morning I watched from the kitchen window as William loaded boxes into his car. Diane supervised pointing and directing, but never lifting anything herself. Her parents had arrived to help, casting disapproving glances toward the house. I had declined to come outside, unwilling to subject myself to their recriminations. By afternoon, most of their belongings were packed. I retreated to the guest room, still unable to face the transformed master bedroom. William found me there, his expression troubled. "Mom, where are we supposed to go?" "We can stay with Diane's parents for a week or two, but they don't have space for us long term. And we can't afford even the cheapest apartments right now." "That sounds like a problem you and Diane need to solve together," I replied. "Your financial difficulties didn't happen overnight and they weren't caused by me." "But you're my mother," he said, his voice rising with frustration. "Aren't you supposed to help me when I'm in trouble?" "I did help you, William. I opened my home when you needed shelter. I didn't expect gratitude, but I did expect respect." "Taking the bigger bedroom wasn't that disrespectful," he argued. "You're making it into a bigger deal than it is." I stood up then, something inside me finally snapping. "It wasn't just about the bedroom, William. It was about the calculated way you both went about it. Waiting until I was gone, changing the locks, removing and damaging my possessions. It was about Diane's comments, about waiting until I'm old enough for a nursing home. It was about the complete disregard for my feelings and autonomy in my own home." William stepped back, startled by my uncharacteristic outburst. "I didn't mean to hurt you," he said quietly. "Perhaps not intentionally, but you allowed it to happen. You stood by while Diane systematically worked to push me out of spaces that matter to me. Whether you actively participated or simply failed to stop it, the result is the same." That evening, as the last of their boxes were packed and loaded, Diane confronted me in the kitchen. Her perfectly applied makeup couldn't hide the anger in her eyes. "I hope you're satisfied," she said coldly. "You forced your only son into homelessness because you couldn't share a little space." This was never about sharing Diane. It was about respect and boundaries, neither of which you seemed to understand. "We were trying to help you," she insisted. "You're too old to maintain this house by yourself. We were doing you a favor by moving in." "A favor I never asked for," I replied calmly, "and one that came with the expectation that I would gradually surrender my home and autonomy to you." "Well, don't come crying to us when you fall and break your hip with no one around to help," she snapped. "And don't expect to be part of our children's lives either. You've made your choice." Her threat hung in the air between us. The thought of being excluded from my future grandchildren's lives was painful beyond measure, but I refused to be manipulated. "I would love nothing more than to be a grandmother someday," I said softly, "but not at the expense of my dignity and self-respect." After they left the house, fell into an eerie silence. I wandered through the rooms, noting all the changes they had made in just 4 short months. The living room furniture I didn't recognize. The kitchen reorganized to Diane's preferences. The dining room curtains replaced with modern blinds. Most painful was finally forcing myself to enter the master bedroom. Standing in the doorway, I barely recognized the space where Robert and I had shared so many intimate moments. The walls, once a warm yellow that caught the morning light, were now a stark white. The handcrafted bed frame Robert's father had made, as our wedding gift was gone, replaced by a platform bed with a tufted gray headboard. Every trace of our life together had been erased from the room, as if our history could be painted over and replaced as easily as wallpaper. That night I slept in the guest room again, surrounded by boxes of my displaced life. Despite my exhaustion, sleep eluded me. Had I done the right thing? Was I being too harsh? William was my only child, my closest living family. By standing my ground, had I irreparably damaged our relationship? Morning brought no clarity, just a hollow ache in my chest, and a house that felt both empty and unfamiliar. I spent the day mechanically sorting through boxes, trying to locate items I needed for daily life. So many things were missing, or damaged casualties of the hasty packing Diane had overseen. By evening, I had reached my breaking point. I couldn't continue living this way in limbo between the home I had loved and the altered space it had become. Something needed to change. I needed to reclaim my life and my surroundings, while also finding a way forward that wouldn't permanently sever my relationship with William. I called Janet, needing her clear-headed perspective. "I did the right thing making them leave," I told her, "but now I'm worried about William. What if they truly have nowhere to go?" "You can help William without sacrificing yourself," Janet reminded me. "There's a difference between supporting someone and enabling destructive behavior." Her words sparked an idea, one that had been forming in the back of my mind. The next morning, I called my financial advisor, Michael, and my attorney, Richard, arranging to meet them for lunch. I need advice about my rental property, I explained when we gathered at a quiet restaurant near Richard's office, and about helping my son without enabling his wife's entitled behavior. The rental house Robert and I had purchased as an investment property 20 years ago had been consistently occupied, managed by a property management company since Robert's passing. It was nothing fancy, a modest 3-bedroom in a working-class neighborhood, but it provided reliable income to supplement my pension. The current tenants are moving out at the end of the month, Michael confirmed, reviewing the property records. Given the current rental market, you could probably increase the rent by at least 15%. I'm not interested in maximizing the rent, I explained. I'm considering offering it to William and Diane at a reduced rate they could afford, even with William's current employment situation. Richard raised an eyebrow. After everything that happened, are you sure that's wise? I'm not sure of anything, I admitted. But William is still my son. I can't just abandon him, even if he made terrible choices. But I also can't have them in my home anymore, not after the boundaries they've crossed. Over the next hour, we developed a plan. I would offer William and Diane a 1-year lease on the rental property at 30% below market rate, with clear written terms and expectations. This would give them stable housing, while William continued his job search, and they worked to improve their financial situation. The reduced rent is your gift to them, Richard emphasized as he drafted the lease agreement, but the clear boundaries are your gift to yourself. When the documents were prepared, I called William and asked him and Diane to meet me the following day. It was time to offer them a solution that would help without hurting me in the process. I arranged to meet William and Diane at a neutral location, a quiet coffee shop downtown, where we would be unlikely to run into friends or neighbors. I arrived early, securing a corner table and ordering a pot of tea to steady my nerves. The manila envelope containing the lease agreement sat on the table before me, a physical manifestation of the boundary I was establishing. They arrived precisely on time, William looking haggard, and Diane sporting designer sunglasses despite the overcast day. The tension was immediate and palpable as they slid into the seats across from me. Thank you for coming, I began, determined to keep my voice steady and my purpose clear. We didn't have much choice, Diane replied coldly. We're living out of suitcases at my parents' house. William placed a restraining hand on her arm. What did you want to talk about, Mom? I took a deep breath. I've been thinking about your situation. While I stand by my decision that you cannot live in my home after what happened, I do want to help you get back on your feet. Diane's eyebrows rose above her sunglasses. William leaned forward, cautious hope in his expression. I own a rental property, as you know, I continued. The current tenants are moving out at the end of the month. I'm prepared to offer you a 1-year lease at significantly below market rate. I slid the envelope across the table. All the details are in here. It's a 3-bedroom house in Cedar Heights, about 20 minutes from downtown. The reduced rent should be manageable even with your current income situation, William. He opened the envelope with shaking hands, reviewing the lease agreement with widening eyes. Mom, this rent is way below what we'd pay anywhere else. I know. It's my way of helping you while you get back on your feet financially. Diane snatched the papers from William, scanning them with a calculating expression. What's the catch? She asked suspiciously. The catch, as you put it, is that this is a business arrangement with clear boundaries, I explained calmly. 1-year lease renewable only if all terms are met. You'll be responsible for utilities and basic maintenance. Any modifications to the property must be approved in writing. And most importantly, this arrangement is completely separate from our personal relationship. Meaning what exactly? Diane pressed. Meaning that my home remains my private space. Meaning that this is the extent of my financial assistance. Meaning that you will treat me with the same respect you would show any landlord. William was still staring at the rental amount, clearly shocked by my generosity. Mom, we can actually afford this. It would give us breathing room to pay down some debt and save a little. That's the idea, I said. I want you to succeed, William. I just can't sacrifice my own well-being in the process. Diane was reading the fine print of the agreement, her brow furrowed. This says we can't make any changes to the property without written permission. What if the decor is outdated? We have our own furniture now. The house is fully furnished, I explained. You're welcome to add your own items, but the existing furniture stays. And yes, any significant changes would require my approval, just as they would with any landlord. And what about when we have children? She continued. This says maximum occupancy is 3 people. We can revisit that clause if and when it becomes relevant, I replied. For now, this is about providing you stable housing while you improve your financial situation. William reached across the table to take my hand. Thank you, Mom. This is more than generous. Diane was still frowning at the paperwork. We should have our own lawyer look this over. Of course, I agreed. Take a few days to consider the offer. The property will be available on the 1st of next month. After they left, I sat alone with my tea, turning over the conversation in my mind. William had seemed genuinely grateful, but Diane's reaction confirmed my instinct that clear boundaries were necessary. This arrangement would provide them the help they needed without sacrificing my own security and peace of mind. The following afternoon, William called to accept the offer. Diane still adjusting to the idea, he admitted. But I've convinced her. This is the best option we have right now. 3 weeks later, I met them at the rental property with the keys. It was a modest but well-maintained Cape Cod-style house on a quiet street lined with maple trees. The previous tenants had left it in good condition, and the property management company had overseen a thorough cleaning. It's smaller than I expected, Diane commented as we walked through the front door into the living room. It's perfectly sized for 2 people, I replied, and the neighborhood is safe and convenient to shopping. I gave them a tour, pointing out features and explaining the quirks of the older home. The kitchen had been updated 5 years earlier with new appliances. The main bathroom had a clawfoot tub I'd had professionally refinished rather than replaced, valuing its vintage charm. The bedrooms were comfortably sized, with the master easily accommodating their queen-sized bed. William seemed to appreciate the home's character, noting the built-in bookshelves in the living room and the large backyard with mature fruit trees. Diane, however, moved through the rooms with a critical eye, clearly making mental notes of all the changes she would want to make. The wallpaper in the dining room has to go, she declared, and these light fixtures are straight out of the 80s. As I mentioned, I reminded her significant changes require written approval, and some features like the original woodwork and built-ins need to be preserved. She gave me a cool look. So we're supposed to live in a museum. You're supposed to live in a well-maintained, affordable rental home, I corrected. One that's costing you far less than market rate. William quickly stepped in. It's a great house, Mom. We appreciate it, really. We can make it work. As I handed over the keys, I felt a complex mixture of emotions. Relief that they would have stable housing. Sadness that our relationship had deteriorated to this point. Hope that this arrangement might give us all space to heal. I've left a binder with information about the property, I told them. Contact numbers for utilities, trash pickup schedule, and so on. The property manager's information is there too, though I'll be your primary point of contact for lease-related matters. So formal, Diane murmured. Clear expectations benefit everyone, I replied evenly. Moving day arrived the following weekend. I offered to help, but William suggested it might be easier if I wasn't present. Diane still processing everything he explained. Give her some space to adjust to the new situation. I respected his request, instead focusing on reclaiming my own home. The master bedroom was my first priority. I couldn't bear the stark white walls and modern furnishings that had replaced my carefully curated sanctuary. I hired painters to restore the warm yellow color Robert and I had chosen together. The platform bed was donated to a women's shelter, and I purchased a new bed frame similar to our original one, though nothing could truly replace the handcrafted piece Robert's father had made. Slowly, room by room, I reclaimed my spaces. Some changes were practical improvements like the updated kitchen faucet Diane had installed. Others I reversed completely, like restoring the original art on the living room walls. It was a physical process of healing, of re-establishing my connection to the home Robert and I had created. 2 weeks after they moved into the rental house, I visited William while Diane was at work. He greeted me with a cautious hug, leading me into a living room that already showed signs of their occupancy, with Diane's decorative pillows arranged on the sofa and William's books filling the built-in shelves. "How are you settling in?" I asked. "Better than I expected," he admitted. "The commute to my new job is actually shorter from here." "You found work?" I asked, pleased. He nodded. "Nothing as high-paying as before, but steady income with a marketing firm, and being here with manageable rent means we can actually start paying off our debt." We sat in awkward silence for a moment before William spoke again. "Mom, I want to apologize properly. What we did was wrong. Taking over your bedroom, changing things without permission. I knew it wasn't right, but I let Diane convince me you would adjust." "Why, William?" I asked the question that had haunted me for weeks. "Why would you participate in something that clearly hurt me?" He stared down at his hands. "It's complicated. Diane can be persuasive, and she has this vision of how our life should be. Sometimes it's easier to go along than to stand up to her. Even at the expense of your relationship with me." "I never wanted to damage our relationship," he said softly. "I thought I could make both of you happy somehow." As I drove home that evening, I pondered William's words. He was caught between two strong-willed women trying to please both and ultimately failing. I couldn't change Diane, but I could control my own responses and boundaries. This arrangement with them in the rental house gave us all space to breathe and reassess our relationships. When I arrived home, I stood in the entryway for a moment, taking in the familiar surroundings that once again felt like mine. The house was quiet, but it was a peaceful quiet now, rather than the echoing emptiness of loss. I had reclaimed not just my physical space but my sense of agency and self-respect. Whatever happened with William and Diane going forward, I had found my footing again. That night I slept in my restored bedroom for the first time since their departure. As I drifted off, I imagined Robert beside me, his presence, a comforting phantom in the darkness. "We built this together," I whispered to the empty room, "and I won't let anyone take it away." 6 months passed, bringing crisp autumn air and maple leaves that turned the streets into rivers of gold and crimson. My home felt truly mine again, restored to a space that honored both memories and my present life. The master bedroom now held the perfect balance of cherished mementos and fresh elements, a sanctuary that acknowledged both Robert's absence and my continuing journey. My relationship with William had entered a new phase, tentative but healing. We met for lunch every other week, carefully avoiding topics that might ignite tension. He had settled into his marketing position and spoke of potential advancement opportunities. These conversations happened at restaurants or coffee shops, neutral territory that freed us from the shadows of our shared conflict. Diane remained distant, declining my invitations to join these lunches. William offered vague explanations for her absence, but I understood the reality: she resented the boundaries I had established. Through William, I learned they were adhering to the lease agreement, making rent payments on time, and requesting permission before making minor changes to the rental property. The formal structure seemed to provide a framework that prevented further conflict even if warmth remained elusive. In my own life, I found unexpected renaissance. The violation of my home had initially left me feeling vulnerable, but as I reclaimed my spaces, I also reclaimed parts of myself that had lain dormant since Robert's passing. I joined a watercolor class at the community center, discovering a talent for capturing the play of light on landscapes. My circle of friends expanded to include other artistic souls who shared my newfound passion. The library where I volunteered promoted me to coordinating their children's reading program, a role that filled my days with purpose and joy. Reading to wide-eyed youngsters reminded me of William's childhood, those precious years before adult complications fractured our easy relationship. My sister Janet visited regularly, marveling at the transformation in both my home and my spirit. "You're glowing," she remarked during one visit. "There's a strength about you that wasn't there before." Sometimes we don't know our own resilience until it's tested. I replied, realizing the truth of the words as I spoke them. As December approached, bringing with it the first snowfall and holiday decorations throughout the neighborhood, I faced a dilemma. Christmas had always been a family celebration in our home. Despite the lingering tension with Diane, I couldn't imagine the holiday without William. After careful consideration, I extended an invitation for Christmas dinner. Nothing elaborate, I assured William over the phone. Just a simple meal, and perhaps an exchange of modest gifts. To my surprise, he accepted immediately. "We'll be there, Mom. Diane, too." The days before their visit, I prepared the house with meticulous care. I baked Robert's favorite gingerbread cookies from his mother's recipe. I decorated a modest tree with ornaments William had made as a child alongside elegant glass balls Robert and I had collected throughout our marriage. Each element was a thread in the tapestry of our family history complex, but beautiful in its entirety. When the doorbell rang at precisely 4 o'clock on Christmas Day, I steeled myself for whatever might come. William entered first, arms laden, with wrapped packages, followed by Diane. She looked different somehow, her usual sleek sophistication softened by a looser hairstyle and minimal makeup. She carried a poinsettia plant, which she thrust toward me with uncharacteristic awkwardness. "Merry Christmas, Margaret," she said, her voice lacking its usual sharp edge. "Thank you for inviting us." The evening unfolded with surprising ease. We exchanged gifts in the living room, the conversation flowing more naturally than I had dared hope. William had found an out-of-print cookbook I had mentioned wanting years ago. Diane presented me with a handcrafted photo frame containing a restored version of a damaged photo of Robert and me on our honeymoon. "William mentioned some of your photos were damaged during the move," she explained, not quite meeting my eyes. "I had this one digitally restored." The thoughtfulness of the gift took my breath away. "Thank you, Diane. This means a great deal to me." As we moved to the dining room for dinner, I noticed Diane taking in the restored space, her eyes lingering on the china cabinet once again filled with my wedding dishes. "You've changed things back," she observed quietly. "Not exactly back," I clarified. "I kept some new elements that worked well, the updated kitchen faucet you installed, for instance. But yes, I needed to reclaim my spaces." She nodded slowly. "I understand that now. I didn't then, but I do now." Over dinner, William shared news of positive developments in their lives. His job was going well with a promotion on the horizon. They had paid off 2 credit cards entirely and were making progress on their remaining debt. "The rental house has been a lifesaver," he admitted. "Having predictable, affordable housing has made all the difference." "We've been taking financial management classes," Diane added, surprising me. "Learning to budget properly and distinguish between wants and needs." As I served apple pie with cinnamon ice cream for dessert, Diane cleared her throat nervously. "Margaret, I owe you an apology. A real one, not just words." William looked as surprised as I felt. Diane had never been one to admit fault. "What happened with your bedroom," she continued, "was inexcusable. I convinced myself it made practical sense, but the truth is, I was being entitled and disrespectful. I treated your home as if it were already ours, and I didn't consider what those spaces meant to you." The sincerity in her voice was unmistakable. I waited, giving her space to continue. "Living in the rental house has been humbling," she admitted. "It's not what I envisioned for us, but it's taught me important lessons about gratitude and respecting boundaries. I'm not asking for forgiveness right now, just acknowledging that I understand why what we did was wrong." "Thank you, Diane," I replied, genuinely touched by her words. "That means a great deal to me." William reached for my hand across the table. "We have some news we wanted to share with you in person." "Good news, I hope." They exchanged a look, a private communication passing between them. William nodded, and Diane's face softened into a genuine smile. "We're expecting a baby," she said softly. "Due in June." The announcement sent a flood of complex emotions through me. Joy at the prospect of a grandchild, concern about their still precarious finances, a touch of sadness that this milestone arrived with our relationship still fragile. "That's wonderful," I managed, my voice wavering slightly. "Truly wonderful news." "We wanted you to know first," William said, "and to tell you that we hope you'll be involved in your grandchild's life. Very involved." "I would love nothing more," I replied honestly. "We'll need to talk about the lease," Diane added practically. "It specified occupancy for 2 people. I smiled at her directness, appreciating this new, more straightforward approach. "We can amend the agreement. The house has 3 bedrooms after all. There's plenty of room for a nursery." As they prepared to leave that evening, Diane lingered in the entryway. "Your house looks beautiful, Margaret. It suits you. I'm sorry I tried to change that." In the months that followed, our healing continued in small, significant steps. Diane and I would never share the easy rapport I had hoped for when William first introduced her, but we were developing a different kind of relationship, one built on hard-won mutual respect rather than artificial affection. William and I found our way back to the close bond we had shared before, though changed by our journey through conflict. He visited more frequently, sometimes alone, creating space for the kinds of honest conversations we had avoided during the painful period of confrontation. "I almost lost you," he confessed during one such visit. "Not physically, but I almost damaged our relationship beyond repair. I don't ever want to make that mistake again." The rental house agreement proved a blessing in unexpected ways. The clear boundaries it established between our financial arrangement and our personal relationship prevented misunderstandings and entitled expectations. William and Diane were model tenants respecting the property and the terms we had agreed upon. As their financial situation improved, they began paying the full market rate rent, insisting it was only fair. When my grandson James was born on a perfect June morning, I held his tiny form with a sense of wonder that transcended all past hurts. Looking at his perfect face, I saw echoes of William as a baby, and further back glimpses of Robert's family features. This child represented not just continuation but possibility, the chance for our family to write new stories untainted by past mistakes. As I settled into my role as grandmother, I reflected often on the painful journey that had led us here. The betrayal of finding my bedroom transformed had been a devastating blow, but it had also been the catalyst for necessary change. Without that shocking moment, we might have continued in an unhealthy pattern with boundaries slowly eroding and resentments building beneath the surface. By standing firm in that moment of crisis, declaring, "Pack your things, you'll need your own house tonight," I had not only protected my own dignity, but ultimately created the conditions for healthier relationships to emerge from the ashes of conflict. On James's first birthday, as we gathered in the rental house's backyard for a modest celebration, I watched Diane organizing games with newfound maternal confidence. William stood at the grill laughing with friends from their financial management class. My home was still my sanctuary, and theirs was becoming a true family nest. The separation of our living spaces had paradoxically brought us closer in the ways that truly mattered. That evening, as William walked me to my car, he hugged me tightly. "Thank you, Mom. For the baby gift, it was nothing special." "No," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "For teaching me that love doesn't mean letting people walk all over you. For showing me that real family respects each other's boundaries. I want to teach James those same values." As I drove home to my peaceful house where memories of Robert coexisted comfortably with my present life, I reflected on the deeper lesson of our family's journey. Sometimes the kindest gift we can offer those we love is the truth of our boundaries, even when that truth is difficult to deliver. Real love exists, not in surrender or domination, but in the healthy space where respect and care meet. My bedroom was mine again, a sanctuary restored. My relationship with my son had weathered its greatest test and emerged stronger. And somewhere along the way, I had discovered that standing up for myself hadn't diminished my capacity for forgiveness. It had enhanced it, grounding it in strength rather than fear. Have you ever had to stand up for yourself against someone you loved? How did you balance maintaining your boundaries while preserving the relationship? Share your experiences in the comments below, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this video if my story resonated with you. Thank you for listening. And remember, protecting your dignity is never selfish. It's the foundation of truly loving relationships.